So I'm going to talk about the state of Filecoin Plus. I've given a handful of these across the years because the program keeps evolving and growing. So to structure this, I'm going to cover kind of the program and system structure, give like a high-level update reminder. How is Fil Plus organized? What are we working on? I'm going to talk about the kind of prioritization of the foundation, like what is it on our roadmap that we've been prioritizing? That has been a friction point for different people. And then ways that people in the community can get involved and help us, and then how we can collaborate, where we need that collaboration. And then we have a couple of other talks after this one around macroeconomics, around some successful allocators that are working really well, what they're doing, and then also around other kind of requests for proposals and types of incentive structures that we want to see. So as a reminder, the Filecoin Plus program is meant to incentivize real clients with real data doing real distributed onboarding. That's what we're trying to incentivize. We try and give a network subsidy to that behavior pattern. And then it is a question of, well, how do you know if it is a real client? How do you know if it is real data? In previous years, there have been lots of kind of esoteric or ideological debates or back and forth on like, well, what is useful? And if I say it's useful, does somebody else have to agree? And that usefulness can sometimes be a trap. Like if one person thinks that their cat video is real and another person thinks that their cat video is dumb, do we get into a debate about the usefulness of that cat video? No, it is not worth it. It is still data that someone wants on the network. So for now, let's continue to subsidize that as real data that is coming from a real client. So that's a kind of a reminder, but keeping that frame, real clients with real data doing real distributed deal making, this is sort of the current system structure. Teams, people, individuals will apply to be an allocator. We have this rolling application process. We launched this last fall. We've been doing it for about a year. We've learned a lot. We have about 80 allocators that came on board in the first round. We've been adding a couple of more throughout the past few months. I'll get into that later. From applying, there's a ratification step. This is where the governance team, primarily consisting of myself and Kere at the foundation, will review these applications. We look for completeness, accuracy. There's a big slowdown here. I'm going to break down each of these sections. But then, if you get approved and you are ratified, you start giving clients data cap. There's tools there. You're doing your diligence checks, and you're giving data cap to these clients, and they're performing deals. And then there's a compliance review where the governance team will then audit all of those interactions. That's kind of the system structure. That's the overview of how Filecoin Plus currently works. And again, all of this is in service of real clients with real data doing real distributed onboarding. So what does it mean to apply to be an allocator? Any of these teams will stand up and say, this is my process for determining these things. My process is, how am I going to do diligence? How are you going to determine if data cap should be awarded? How are you going to determine if it's a real client? How are you going to determine if it's real data? How are you going to determine if it's real onboarding, real distribution? How are you going to ask those questions up front? How are you going to verify it downstream? How are you going to intervene when you get it wrong? That's what we ask. You tell us how you are going to design. From there, like, what is your quantitative and qualitative process? Quantitatively, I'm going to ask people for an email address, or qualitatively, I'm going to say, what is your business email address? I'm going to interact with you. I'm going to verify that you are a business owner in some way. That's my KYC check. That is a qualitative assessment. Quantitatively, you might say, I am going to require that they use 3 SPIDs in 3 different regions. And then when they go do that deal making, you can verify that number downstream. So from that, to get ratified, we review them. There's a long process to review them, and then there is still a process to actually do the ratification. We have to award data cap to this new allocator. We have to put this allocator in a JSON registry. We have to make sure they know how to use the tooling to actually send the data cap out. All of this takes an amount of tooling, an amount of work. And one of the reasons that we want to change some of this is because we still have this request for allocators open. We want to see more diversity and more automation in these different pathways. I'll talk about that some more later. Clients then start applying. Allocators are giving out data cap. Again, you described your process. How are you going to go do biz dev? Is it going to be obfuscated away from the client where you submit all of these bookkeeping applications on behalf of your clients? Are they going to be submitting them themselves? You tell us how you're going to do it, and then go do it. Give that data cap out and maintain those records. And then perform follow-up investigations. If you said that you were going to check this information, you were going to require them to work with a certain number of SPs, did they do so? And if not, are you checking to see that that is true? Because there's going to then be an audit. These are the compliance reviews. When you start to run out of data cap as an allocator, ideally when you hit 75% has been dispersed, there will be a compliance audit where we look at all of those behavior paths. Is there bookkeeping? Does the bookkeeping match what you said? And then if so, we will request additional data cap from the root key holders and ideally continue to grow the amount of data cap you get up to a certain point to give you more runway. So, what are our priorities? For the past year, I would say that our top priority has been performing these compliance reviews. It was a new process. It was different for each allocator because every allocator put in their own application. It was labor intensive. It's highly manual. We didn't have a lot of framework for it, and we had to create new templates, new bots, new process. We had to say, how much are we going to track these qualitative things and how much are we going to weight them in our overall review? How much grace are we going to give? What is our threshold? This has taken a huge amount of work. It has been a pain point for all of us in the ecosystem because it creates slowdowns for all of us. But we have made massive strides in doing so. We are increasing our capacity. We're increasing the speed with which we can complete them. We are learning more from each one, but they are duplicative. Each new allocator that we approve, it's a whole new set of these. Each time an allocator completes and runs out, we have to do it again. And every time we do it, it becomes longer for each allocator because there are more touch points. So it doesn't just scale and get faster by the fact of doing more of them. We have to be intelligent about where we're investing those resources. After that, we provide a lot of technical support to these existing allocators. Addresses have to change. Someone needs to add a new GitHub. Somebody change something in their bookkeeping repo. That also is a huge time drain to keep all of these allocators functioning, right? We're building a lot of tooling with them. This has been a major priority. And then we've been looking for strong RFA applicants. We've gotten a couple from posting it, and we've been onboarding those. From there, other things we do, communications, wayfinding, client discovery. Our amazing team is working on putting together a allocator discovery page. This is live now at the fil.org. You can go check it out. The goal here is to have a place where clients coming to the ecosystem can get connected to an allocator. How can we increase the different fields that they might search for? How can we help do that matchmaking to say, hey, we have a new client coming to us and they want to get data cap. How do we make that process faster? This has been a priority that we've been investing in. As well as chain interaction tooling. How do we build tools for all these different stakeholders so that they can actually send the messages that they need to? That takes a huge amount of work. And then overall, what is our system design? What is our focus on PMF? These have been sort of our main priorities for the past year. I think we've done pretty well on a lot of them. But then after that, these are sort of the next level down. And this has been a friction point for people. There's been a lot of push to onboard new allocators. We've gotten, I think, something like 30 additional new applications for new allocators. However, most of those applications have been relatively duplicative. They're still manual. They're still performing manual diligence. They're still working with the same types of clients. They're still behaving in a very similar way to the 60 that we already have. So what is the main value add in us doing all of this work again of all the tooling, all the onboarding, all the ratification for 30 more when we already have 60? And again, when you look at these compliance reviews, they do not intrinsically scale. We have to add headcount in order to do more compliance reviews faster. So this has been a lower priority for us. This is why we've been pushing teams to go be specialized. Go build a specialized pathway instead of just saying, well, I'll do manual diligence for now until I've figured it out. Go build the specialized pathway first. After that, improving allocator onboard process and bookkeeping. How do we make that faster so that we can onboard them faster? How do we make it easier? How do we make it more consistent and standardized? How do we have more quantitative tools? How do we build a better quantitative reporting system so that when we do these compliance reviews, the application that got submitted connects to the JSON registry, connects to a compliance bot, connects to all the chain interactions so that the compliance report that we see has more quanta and less, let me pull together 15 different things. And after that, how do we overall improve dashboards? This has been our sort of next level priorities. We work primarily on GitHub. This hasn't changed. We have 2 main repos that we use. This is where you can interact with us, open issues. We have different issue templates. We have a allocator governance repo for overall, for sort of program governance, and then we also have a registry where we are tracking all of the active allocators. K-Ray facilitates an allocator governance call. He does 2 of them every other week. It's a huge lift. It's fantastic. If you have issues, need support, he posts a GitHub issue that says call for agenda items. If there's something that you want on there, we ask for it, and then we've got a lot of Slack channels. So then the question is, how can we collaborate? What is it that we need? This is just an idea. This isn't everything. These are sort of the top 3 ideas that come to my mind in thinking about where is the opportunity for the ecosystem to work with us? What can the ecosystem build to help move us forward? I've already talked a lot about RFAs. What would it look like for us to have a really good data clearinghouse? Somebody to build a platform that a client can upload the data to it, SPs can go sample it. The client could say, this data set, I can verify that I own it and I have it. I can put it in this clearinghouse and I can put a bid on it. SPs could go look at it. They could bid on it. The client could say it needs to hit these parameters. Once those parameters line up, the clearinghouse could release that data to the SP. The funds could then be released back and forth. Someone could build a portal where that could happen. That would be an amazing value add to the community because we would have a onboarding pathway where clients could bring their data and have protections on that data making it to the SPs that they want. And SPs wouldn't have to go do all of their own biz dev. That's an option. But myself and K-Ray and the foundation, we're not gonna build that. That is out of our purview to scope it, invest in it, hire a staff, and build it. That is a service that someone else in the ecosystem could build. And we would love to help by advising, by connecting you with other resources, but we're not gonna be the ones to build that roadmap. Additionally, what are other quantitative bots? What other API integrations could we have? For example, paid deal reporting. We'd love for somebody to go build a bot that aggregates paid deals and just says, interactions of this client, of this allocator, of this SP, here's all the on-chain paid deal activity. If we want to show that Filecoin is a useful network of data storage, taking enterprise clients and paid deals, where are we tracking that? Where are we reporting it? A lot of these deals are still being paid for off-chain. If we want to move in a world where we can prove to a client, we can prove to an investor, we can prove to another SP that someone is willing to put money behind this data, then put that money on the chain. That's not impossible to do. And then other things we'd love to see are just other client onboarding tools. What could something like a data set access? We've seen this come up a few times recently where an allocator will say, this person came to me and they said, I want to onboard the Common Crawl AWS data set. And so I approved it and I gave them some data cap. But then we go look and we're like, right, well that data set is already on the network 100 times. What's the value add of the 101st copy? So they come back, they say, well, we don't know where those other 100 are, or who could get to them, or if they're retrievable. Someone could build a great dashboard that looks at all of those open data sets and scores them and says, hey, we've got all of these copies of this public open data set from this place. Here's where you can go see a score on its retrievability, on how long it's been uploaded, on how many times someone has verified it or audited it. And then again, from a storytelling perspective, we get to go out and say, look, we, Filecoin, have built a redundant backup of all of these public open data sets, and we have high confidence, and you can go independently prove that all of them work. So there's just some ideas. But upcoming sessions for the rest of the afternoon, I have no idea how we're doing on time. We're going to get some allocator spotlights and some success stories from K-Ray. Then Danny is going to facilitate a conversation on macroeconomics. And then Will is going to do a session on pathway iteration. So 3 more topics. We'll have, I think, time for questions. How are we doing on 30-minute? Oh yeah, we got 10 minutes. Great, 10 minutes of questions. There should be another mic floating around.
Hi guys, I'm from the labs, and actually now the questions for you. I'm just curious about these rooms. Like guys like you, are you have the allocators, and also are you curious about what allocators, the status of allocators are? Just talking, and not a questions for you. Sorry.
Steph is not an allocator. Will and I and Marta are from Fiddle, so we run 2 allocators, the open data pathway and enterprise pathway. Yeah, so anybody else here as an allocator?
Not much questions. I'm just from what I know now, like the people here, the allocators, and I was thinking what the other allocators are struggling with, and
Yeah, I think from where I'm sitting, one of the things that a lot of the allocators are struggling with, I talked about the compliance reviews. Those take a long time, and there's not a lot of insight into where is it stuck, right? So we've been working on better labels. We've been working on SLAs and trying to track those SLAs. We've been working on, the reporting tooling so that they can see when they open a compliance review. We try and get to it sooner and add the comments, and then have more back and forth. So I think that has been a pain point. That has been very vocal. I think beyond that, maybe the next level down is sort of just the ongoing problem that maybe Danny will speak to of, does the math still work? Does the math on data cap and ROI still work? For a long time, for 2.5 years, we kept saying, come to Filecoin, get data cap, and you can do free data storage. And we told people that because we said the math of getting data cap will balance out in block rewards. And that is just not the same calculus anymore, right? With the amount of data cap that's out there, with the size of the network, with token price, the math no longer works for us to say you can do free storage with data cap and survive on block rewards. So I think the next pain point down, which is a bigger, more kind of existential pain point, is what is the structure of both Filecoin as a network as well as the Fil program? Should data cap change the way that it is structured as a subsidy so that we can continue that process of block rewards are a sufficient enough incentive? And I would argue no. I would argue that going in that direction of saying let's continue to change the calculation so that we either, instead of it being a 10x chance of winning the lottery, it becomes a 100x chance of winning the lottery. So therefore, I think that just punts the problem down the line. I think the shift that we need to have is more around how do we build more services? How do we support people charging for deals? How do we change the way people are running their business so that, and this goes to, I was having a conversation with Eric, instead of Filecoin being a game where we're all throwing money into the middle of the pot and trying to gamble against one another and compete where I win by someone else in the ecosystem losing, we need to shift the way the economics work to say people are bringing in services and charging, and so their business model is not, if I get data cap, I'll win on block rewards. It's, I'm designing a pathway and I'm gonna go offer this service and charge for it. And I think that's where we're still, from a Fil program perspective, that's why we wanna see more RFAs. We wanna see more teams that are building more of those specialized pathways. Other questions?
Right now we have an allocator structure with a bunch of allocators. Hi, I'm Will. But right now, there's a bunch of allocators that are operating within Fil Plus. And we seem to have a structure that is the allocators working to maximize efficiency within the constraints of the program. But there is nothing in this program that is causing allocators to compete with other allocators. Allocators are competing with the program. They're not competing with each other. There's nothing that's like an upward pressure here. It's about how can I be more efficient in the scope of the program. And so in an allocator role, I am trying to more efficiently work against that. So we have that structure that is a structure that is in the game theory of how this is set up seems to inherently mean that there is an adversarial relationship between an allocator being efficient and the program. Is that status quo going to change? Is that just what we want? Is there a way to evolve that? Is that something we can expect? Is that where we'll be in a year?
These are great questions. I think that that's the problem with.
Is there a way to forecast where we'll be in a year? Is there a way to have any certainty?
I mean, there's no way to have any certainty.
Or maybe not certainty, but an idea.
There are ways to forecast where we will be, but I think that we remain stymied in a situation where it depends on who is the decision maker. And so if we continue to say, do we want to continue prioritizing data onboarding or allocators or public open data or these things that we have done? Do we want to continue structuring it the way that we have? Do we want to make incremental changes, or do we want to make bigger overall changes to sort of the incentive and subsidy mechanism? And I think that those are difficult questions to answer because forecasting those options is really hard. I think that we could all agree that the status quo is not serving us in the near term and that we need to at least make some changes. And that's where we've been for a year. The shift to allocators was an incremental change to try and say, let's have more decentralization and more teams building their own independent pathways rather than let's have kind of one LDN model, and from that LDN model, let's say these are the rules. We agreed that that also wasn't serving us. So to your point of where will we be in a year, if it were up to me, I would love to see allocators proposing different incentive and subsidy structures so that an allocator doesn't just say, my job is to innovate on how I'm doing diligence. My job is to innovate on the business model. So the allocator could say, instead of, and maybe this goes to like the pathway iteration, the allocator could say, okay, here's a proposed structure. It's a pool, and clients pay into the pool, SPs pay into the pool, other allocators pay into the pool, and the block reward as well as the reward out of this pool is divvied up based on like these other criteria. And so then you've changed the math of the subsidy from just saying, okay, well, it's a 10x QAP with this like collateral change. So in a year, I would like to see allocators doing that because that also wouldn't necessarily require the entire ecosystem to have a FIP that says, okay, data cap is now this, everything's on like whatever. We can flex an L2 within the existing system without needing to like reinvent everything.
Can you elaborate a bit more on what you mean when you say that the program is structurally designed so that allocators have to compete against it? I ask only because if it's a question of efficiency, any kind of diligence program is always going to be inefficient compared to a lack of a program, if that makes sense.
And I'll just say, let's finish this discussion shortly and talk about it in the last session as well. I see Juan, you can ask your question as well, but let's keep it because we are running out of time for this session.
The way that you...
And we have time later.
It seems like right now the way that you are a better allocator is enabling more data to be stored with the 10x multiplier with less overhead. And so you've got some constraints and some baseline of the diligence and so forth that you need to meet at the program level. And you are racing to the bottom of how efficiently can you do that? How little time do you need and so forth. And that is what allows you to have a lower cost at doing the same thing, and you get the same benefit. Everyone gets the same benefit, the 10x. And so who has the lowest cost is the thing we're optimizing. And it's not who is doing the best job and then a retro PGF outsized reward for that entity. There's nothing that's saying the thing that rewards you as an allocator is you're doing really high quality data that's good and is impactful. Because what we've got is a fixed reward, and the thing we're competing on is who can do that the cheapest.
I'm just gonna apologize. I was late, so I didn't catch all of the conversation before. So I'm just responding to just the segment that I caught. You mentioned the allocators were an incremental change. I think in practice they were, but they were not meant to be an incremental change. They were meant to be a much bigger substantive change. And the fundamental way that we do that is by how we run the process of enabling, supporting, instigating more allocators. So describing the pipeline with no predictability of saying we don't know where we'll be in a year, I don't think is a viable path going forward. I think we need a substantial change in how we're running this program, or a lot of the people that are working really hard to work with it are gonna exit it. And so I think you should have a very clear picture of what you want to happen over the next 3, 6, 12 months and guide the community with a roadmap very concretely and forecast a lot better. And I think saying, hey, we don't know, I understand that there's a lot of unpredictability, but I don't think it's a good, viable way to guide the community.
Yeah. Yeah, we went over what our priorities are, but I think that it still fundamentally comes down to there's a difference between what we and myself and the foundation want or are targeting towards, and then what the community or different allocators or different SPs or different FIPs are going to change. It's yes, we have a projected things that we are hoping to move towards, but also if one of the things that we want is more allocators that are running, through automation, that are scoped and tighter, the only way that we will be able to enact that change is either for us to build it ourselves or to stop approving people that aren't doing it. And so we have to apply these levers in a very kind of second-hand way, right? So if we want more teams to build automated, structures, we could either go do them ourselves, which we don't have the bandwidth to do, or we can say, that's all that we're going to approve, and that's what we've been doing. And in the past, 6 months since we posted the RFA, we have gotten, I think, 2 teams that have actually gone through the RFA, read it, and proposed allocators that are doing things off of it. And so, we are going to continue pushing for those programmatic changes to try and say we want more automation, we want more specialization in the pathways, we want more tooling to streamline it, we want more data onboarding mechanisms. But again, it's this question of the foundation, myself, Carrie, the governance team, we don't own this idea of, what is the subsidy mechanism? What is the right product market fit for Filecoin? What's the right product market fit for Fil Plus? We are able to say the thing that we want to incentivize is growth in this direction. And that's what we've been doing.